What's up guys, it's Punchy, and it's about time we discuss something that you've all been waiting for. If you've been on Deepwoken in the last week, I'm sure you've been farming or want to farm the new insane Heart of Enmity boss fight. For whatever reason, the Heart of Enmity is something that's extremely worth doing, especially with a team. Today, I'll be explaining the ins and outs about how this boss functions and what we can do to pierce his defense, as well as a possible team combination for you to try out. I'm aware players have soloed this boss and it can happen consistently, but be realistic, the standard Deepwoken player just isn't gonna do that. So grab your team, set up your builds, and let's begin the ultimate Enmity slaying guide. To first kick off our breakdown about Enmity, let's start with the constants for the boss itself. What sort of enemy are we working with, and how can we best adapt to this behavior? As a starting point, the Heart of Enmity boss fight has some of the most insane and out-of-pocket resistances in the entire game, which shift how we orient our builds and playstyle. Based off some testing in-game, the Heart of Enmity has ridiculous resistance to all elemental damage as well as any projectile attack. Normally, this wouldn't be a big deal, it's just elemental damage, but if you think about it, every single meta PvE build mostly revolves around multiple elemental spam. Unfortunately, this boss doesn't respect any of that, so you want to be up close against the boss without using anything elemental. So instead of using a build with Gale Breath or Frost Draw, which is usually meta, we should be focusing on weapon builds. Further upon this, oath damage seems to be reduced when fighting the Heart of Enmity. A majority of players that I see in the PvE scene like to use oaths such as Dawnwalker, but it just doesn't do well in this sort of environment. First of all, Enmity resists a ton of damage from any oath, and if you have a team around you, Dawnwalker moves will just hit them, so I wouldn't use it. Overall, most oaths suffer in this boss fight, but you can still use oath utility instead. Moving on to the craziest resistance, the Heart of Enmity actually has full immunity to all enchants. It's pretty straightforward, but no enchants work at all against the boss, which just places a higher priority on slapping Enmity with full-on damage. Unfortunately, there's no creativity available when it comes to enchants, since he's just immune. Other immunities involved for the Heart of Enmity come into play since he's immune to all bleed and all knockback. For knockback, it kinda makes sense, so no running attacks or mantra can move him, but bleeding, that's kinda crazy. All forms of innate bleed, like the Razor's Cutlass or Evan Spear's Axe, and earned bleed through speed boosts with Speed Demon do not impact this boss and are effectively useless. Again, to finalize our damage method, we seriously just need to hit him hard with single weapon attacks. Bleed, oaths, enchants, elements, and knockback all don't work very well or are just useless, so at the end of the day, just hit him hard. As a starting point, this boss is pretty tanky, but let's actually discuss how the boss functions in combat. There's a lot of complex attacks and behavior that needs to be learned, so let's discuss. To start, the Heart is a unique Deepwoken boss with only two types of attacks. To fight against this boss effectively, you must parry his parryable attacks and dodge his unparryable attacks. Blocking is possible, but you don't want to do this. I know it sounds simple, but it's gotta be respected to kill him quickly. The Heart of Enmity has three parryable attacks which are pretty easy to understand once you fight them. The first of his parryable interactions that has the most impact is the Stomp into Slash combo. This attack is pretty easy to understand. He stomps once and then slams down after, but if you don't parry the initial kick, you're gonna take a lot of damage from that stomp. This sort of attack confirms and knocks down the player, so stay calm after that first strike and wait a bit until the second hit comes out. Next, he has two separate attacks that look kinda similar, which slash twice across the player's screen 2 times. Again, don't parry too quickly and treat these attacks like slower Sharko slashes because they're essentially the same thing. After the first slash, the second one will always happen, and all you gotta do is play patiently and respect them. Additionally, if you're at a distance, the Heart of Enmity will throw a stunning axe that knocks away, and I think it's parryable, but regardless, whenever you see him do this, your best bet is to avoid by dodging or being out of the range, but you really want to stay near the boss to prevent it from even happening. Since the boss will only activate its range attack based on the context of the fight, staying nearby removes this attack entirely from the moveset. Now, onto the unparryable attacks, which the Heart of Enmity also uses. These ones aren't too difficult to understand, but they might have the most impact in the entire fight and will kill your team if you are not reacting correctly. The first attack is the Kanabo Swing. Similar to the Kanabo weapon, the Heart of Enmity pulls back and swings horizontally, swiping the player and sending them very far away with super high knockback. Although this attack is indicated pretty well with a red eye and sound effects, the animation is almost unreadable in many many situations. It's very difficult to dodge this if you're not being ready, and I'd always be on the lookout for the Kanabo swing. If you don't know what attack is gonna happen next, I'd always slow down and stop M1ing the boss because this unparryable attack might be thrown out and it's really annoying. Now, the final unparryable attack from this boss is the 1-2 grab combo. So he kneels down and grabs the player with a delayed hit, which you have to wait for to react against. Dodging too quickly can leave you at risk, forcing you to take the damage. The best way to deal with this attack is holding S against the grab, delay your dodge, or just use prediction or some sort of negate to get rid of that grab entirely. I do this myself to optimize my damage output and reduce the time on defense. Alright, that was all for the weapon attacks for the heart, but he's a little bit more complex than that. This boss can actually mix up against players and punish their incorrect reactions, which I will explain right here. For starters, this boss will put together its parryable attack strings back to back to back. At times, the Heart of Enmity will do its stomp attack into the double swings, added up to a maximum of 3 different attacks. After completing 3 unique boss attacks in a random pattern, he will stop swinging and stand still, allowing you to deal damage without any defense. You have to maintain your defense until the boss chills out, which is unique to this boss specifically. Additionally, instead of doing a parryable attack, this boss can mix up during his sequence into an unparryable baseball swing or grab. It's a random chance for this to happen, but whenever an unparryable attack occurs, his attack phase will instantly end and then you can hit him. He doesn't have to do 3 separate attacks to stop swinging. As soon as an unparryable attack finishes, so does his offense. So that's how the Heart of Enmity attacks normally, and yeah, it's pretty complex, but he can actually punish the player if they do defend incorrectly. For whatever reason, if you dodge an attack that should be parried, the heart will instantly attack the player with an unparryable attack. Also, if you have the Ignition Deep Delver and parry an unparryable attack, he's gonna throw out another unparryable attack or something else. This can catch players off guard, but this punishment is entirely avoidable if you just play correctly by defending as they want you to. And finally, the final attack for this boss is spawning in enforcers for players to kill. This is probably the most unmanageable part of the entire boss fight, forcing players to spread out and take these minions out first. I'd recommend having a player on your team or just having a Pale Briar to shred through their defense effectively. Now that everything about this boss has been explained with some defensive counterplay, let's discuss the roles involved in this boss fight if you want to have a team. In a full team of 5 people, the minimum requirement of players to spawn the boss, we can separate them into different positions. It's definitely possible to solo this boss, but if you want to split it up, you can also do that. Usually when I play, we run a team of 2 primary damage dealers, the DPS guys who are always fighting the boss, 1 damage dealer that can switch out whenever somebody gets low, a flexible blind seer healer that can kill enforcers and heals people and basically do whatever, and a dedicated support player with potions. If you're interested in a full build breakdown for damage dealing, like and subscribe, and I will be releasing a build video later this week. Anyway, this is how we play with our damage dealing builds. Based on our earlier explanation, there's honestly not that many talents in our builds that can actually impact the boss, so we have to play for a defensive setup instead. With the use of Brick Wall, we can ignore a lot of enemies knockdown and knockback, which is what I'd prioritize over anything else. Cycling healing mantras, racial buffs, counters, and damage negation is a lot of what keeps our damage dealers alive. Additionally, applying damage buffs with charm mantras, charming Fade Trimmer spray, and taunt can do a lot to shred through enmity. Above anything else, maintaining Chain of Perfection is the most important thing that you can do outside of staying alive, but I'll go further in depth in my build video. At all times, 2 damage dealers should always be slapping the Heart of Enmity, and our 3rd DPS can switch out if people get low. Now, when it comes to our support players, we're gonna see a lot of healing from both our Blind Seer Enforcer Slayers and our Salt Chemist support. I don't really have much experience playing these roles, but a majority of the gameplay comes into putting the team above yourself. The enforcing killing role can be pretty simple with a Pale Briar posture damage build, and healing the team can also work easily with Mind Suit. And onto our support, I generally think that Chemist works the best. By drinking potions nearby your team with placebo or just giving them potions, this is what you want to be doing. For my specific DPS build, I would get heals from my team by popping Iron Skin or some sort of like negation and letting the heals roll in, but whatever works can help. And with that, that's a brief breakdown when it comes to fighting the new Heart of Enmity boss. I plan on discussing in a future video how to maximize your gameplay as a damage dealer, but honestly, support isn't that difficult to do. So if you learned something, comment down below your own thoughts, and I do want to see how you guys play. There's no wrong way to fight this boss unless you're wiping, so share your own method down below to help those in need. Anyway, thank you so much to all of my loyal fans and members who support my channel directly. If you like what I do, feel free to join up down below for even more content. As always, thanks again, and make sure to like and subscribe. I'm shooting for 105k subs, and let's hit that goal. Have a good one. It's punchin' time.